I lost my grandparents when I was little, so most of what I know about them comes from stories and the paper trail they left behind. And that paper trail was supposed to change my life. They left me an inheritance. Not a mystery amount, not some vague, one day you'll get something, but a real structured plan, money set aside to pay for my education and help me get started as an adult. The kind of head start that doesn't make you rich but makes your life possible. My cousins got that head start. My older sister got that head start. They're all debt-free. They own their homes. They're stable in a way that isn't just they work hard, but they didn't start the race 10 miles behind everyone else. And me? I got the version of that story where someone decides to be a hero with my future. My grandfather had left my money in a specific account. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't exciting, but it was safe. It was intended. It was what he chose. My dad looked at that and thought, I can do better. Not, I should protect this. Not, I should follow the instructions of the man who built it. No, I know more than him. He decided he could invest it himself and outperform what my grandfather set up. And when I was finally old enough to access what was supposed to be mine, I didn't get the amount everyone else got. I got $27,000. $27,000. About 10% of what everyone else received. That number has lived in my head like a splinter. Because it wasn't just a smaller inheritance. It wasn't, Grandma and Grandpa liked you less. It wasn't the market dipped a little. It was a choice someone made with my name on it. And it wasn't just my inheritance either. My parents also lost a bunch of money that had been left to my mom. Different pot, same theme, reckless confidence, zero accountability. So it wasn't like this was some isolated mistake where they learned their lesson. It was more like a family tradition of taking something stable and lighting it on fire, then acting shocked that it burns. By the time I fully understood the scale of what happened, it wasn't just anger, it was grief. Because money is money, sure, but it represented more than that. It was school without crushing loans. It was choosing a degree based on passion and potential, instead of what pays fastest. It was a down payment. It was moving out earlier. It was a buffer if life got ugly. It was a future my grandparents tried to hand me, and my parents treated like their personal experiment. And the part that really stuck in my throat was the ego behind it. Not desperation. Not a medical emergency. Not, we were going to lose the house. No, pride. He wanted to prove he could turn a profit investing. Like my grandfather did. Like it was a competition. Like my life was the scoreboard. I tried for a while to talk about it like a reasonable adult. I said things like, why did you do that? And what happened? And do you understand what you took from me? And the answers were never satisfying. It was always some blend of excuses and minimizing, and we did our best. Or my personal favorite, acting like I should be grateful I got anything at all. At some point, I realized they weren't going to fix it. They weren't going to own it. They weren't going to look me in the eye and say, we messed up and we're going to make you whole. So I made the decision that felt impossible until it felt necessary. I cut them out of my life. Not a dramatic screaming match. Not a, you'll never hear from me again speech. Just distance, followed by silence, followed by boundaries that became walls. They weren't invited to my wedding. They haven't met my kids, and that part matters because my sister is child-free, so my kids are their only grandchildren. You'd think that would be enough to make them reflect, enough to make them humble, enough to make them ask, what can we do to repair this? Instead, what happened was exactly what you'd expect from people who don't believe they did anything unforgivable. They started reaching out because they wanted to be in my children's lives, not because they finally understood what they'd done, not because they had a plan to right the wrong, because they wanted access. They wanted the photos and the holidays and the grandma and grandpa moments. And I'll admit, part of me wanted to believe it meant something. That maybe becoming grandparents, or the chance to, had cracked something open in them. So I offered them a deal. Not an emotional deal like, write me a letter, or go to therapy, or apologize in front of the family. A concrete one. I told them, if they replaced what I lost, my inheritance plus interest, I would forgive them, and I would allow them to meet my kids. Because the truth is, forgiveness without accountability is just permission to do it again. And in my head, that money wasn't just a number. It was proof. Proof they understood what they did. Proof they valued my future as much as their pride. Proof they were willing to sacrifice something real to repair something they broke. Their response? They said I was being ridiculous. They said the amount I was asking for would put a huge dent in their retirement. They said it like I was demanding a yacht, like I was extorting them. Like I didn't spend years paying the interest on the life they stole from me. That's when I asked the question that made them very quiet for a moment. I said, "How much would you have if Dad hadn't decided he knew better than my grandfather?" Because that's the thing no one likes to say out loud. They don't get to act like their retirement is sacred when they gambled my education. They don't get to clutch their pearls about hardship when they handed it to me as a starter kit. Now, I didn't say that calmly, to be clear. I've been calm for years. This wasn't calm. This was the part where my patience hit the wall and shattered. Then my sister got involved. She thinks I'm being mean, and I understand why she feels comfortable saying that. Because she got her money. She got her full inheritance, or at least something close to it. She's debt-free. She owns her home. She has the stability I was supposed to have. It's always easier to preach forgiveness when you didn't pay the price. So when she said I was being cruel, I said something that, in hindsight, probably wasn't the most diplomatic. I told her she was welcome to give me her money if she didn't think it was a factor. Because if money isn't the point, it shouldn't be a problem, right? She immediately said she wasn't going to do that. Of course she wasn't. And that's when I said, "Then stop telling me it doesn't matter." The argument got messier from there. At some point, I also suggested that if she cares so much about my parents having grandchildren, she could always have a kid. And once again, that was not an option, which, to be fair, I get. People don't owe anyone children, but it hit a nerve because suddenly everyone was very clear about boundaries. Hers, theirs, everyone's except mine. My parents can demand a relationship with my children, but I'm mean for asking for accountability. My sister can firmly say, "I'm not giving you my inheritance and I'm not having kids," and that's respected immediately. But my boundary, "You don't get to play grandparents after you sabotaged my start in life," gets treated like I'm throwing a tantrum. It's been years. I'm not in the heat of the moment anymore. I'm not a teenager slamming doors. I'm an adult with a spouse and kids and a full life. And I'm still pissed, because what they stole wasn't just money. It was options. It was safety. It was time. It was the ability to begin adulthood with a steady floor instead of quicksand. And every time I see my cousins' houses or hear about my sister's comfortable life, it's not jealousy that hits me first. It's the reminder that this wasn't inevitable. It didn't have to be this way. My parents didn't just make a mistake. They made a decision. And when the consequences came, I was the one who carried them. Now they want to be grandparents. They want the fun part. They want the warm photos and the birthdays and the bragging rights. But they don't want the accountability. They don't want the discomfort. They don't want to dent their retirement. And I'm sitting here thinking, you already dented my entire adulthood. So here's where I'm stuck. On one hand, I know I'm angry. I know I've said some sharp things. I know using money as a condition can sound cold if you ignore the context. On the other hand, this isn't random money. This is my inheritance. This is the tangible proof of what they took and what they're refusing to repair. And I'm not asking them to pay for my forgiveness like it's a transaction. I'm asking them to prove they understand what they did by undoing it as much as they can. Because apologies don't rebuild a future. Checks do. And if they truly care about being in my kids' lives, wouldn't they be willing to sacrifice for it? Wouldn't they be willing to make it right? Or is it only important as long as it's convenient? So, am I the asshole for telling them they don't get access to my children unless they replace what they lost, inheritance plus interest, after they burn through my future for my dad's ego?